Very good. I always start with very good, and I don't know why I do that. Hey, everybody. This is Mike Shea, host of the DM's Deep Dive right here on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. And today I am with my good friend, Enrique Bertran, the Newbie DM. And he and I are going to discuss the topic of all things. I'm going to use the word miniatures, but it's not about just miniatures. We're going to talk about tokens and pogs and pawns and flat plastic things and unpainted three-dimensional plastic things and unpainted three-dimensional plastic things that didn't exist 5 minutes before you hit a print on a button, and painted things, and just everything that has to do with miniatures. Enrique, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Are we also going to talk about lions, tigers, and bears?
No, we're not unless you use them on a table to represent things.
All right. Well, in the interest of, I'm a TV guy, Mike, so in the interest of self-promotion, cross-promotion, I should say that I also have a podcast on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, the Newbie DM minicast. Today, episode 3 released, so I'm hopeful that people go out and hopefully people go out and find it. My name, as he said, is Enrique. Hi, I'm online as Newbie DM on Twitter and on my website, newbiedm.com, and I've been blogging and writing and sort of doing this D&D thing online for about close to 10 years now. I think this is my 9th year. We sort of mirrored each other. We sort of started together with 4E, right?
Yep. Back in those early 4E blogger days.
Back in the halcyon days of 4E blogging.
Yeah. We were just talking about that the other couple nights ago, and
we were
saying like, who do you think is going to be like the next big deal in D&D? And then you see this $1 million Matt Colville train go roaring by. And go, wow, what the hell was that? Missed that one.
But here we are, right?
Here we are. Yep.
Chugging along.
Oh yeah. So and during all of this time, we have been doing all sorts of things with minis. I'm talking about the back in the 4E days. With the 4E days, some sort of tabletop representation of characters and monsters for the sake of tactics was almost, I'd argue pretty mandatory. I think it was very rare to hear anybody that tried to run combat without a map and miniatures of some sort.
I've always heard, you'll hear someone say, "Oh, I ran 4E fine without minis." I would love to sit at that table and watch them do it.
Right. I remember reading an article from a guy who was like an old school second edition person who ran 4E and was going to use theater of the mind and described it to the players, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, how does that work? Like, I'm moving 5 squares. How do we talk about that?"
Like, I'd really love to see that, because I'm sure I could learn something from that person, because it sounds like a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, well, the options are certainly much wider now, I think, with running 5e. I have come to embrace theater of the mind as one of the one of the tools that we can use to run D&D, and I'll switch all different types. And I don't think that was as easily possible back in the 4E days. So I'm glad to have that.
So when I started playing D&D, and I started playing D&D close to 30 years ago, I guess, I started playing first edition. That was the first edition I played, AD&D. Mm-hmm. And we played it without minis. My DM was a theater of the mind guy. Second edition, we had minis, but we really just used them for positioning and marching order and that sort of thing. It wasn't really like a tactical type thing. Mm-hmm. That's why when third edition came out and I saw how much of a chess game the whole thing had become, I was kind of weirded out about it. I'm like, I don't remember D&D being this. And it was kind of a weird change for me to suddenly have to use minis in the game. And even though if you really read the 1E Player's Handbook, they talk in measurements of inches and all sorts of weird things where it doesn't really know if it's a miniature game or not, kind of, That game's kind of all over the place, reading back now after so many years, but
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time strolling back through memory lane, but it is relevant to the topic of minis. Which, I was the same way. Like I played second edition, and we drew everything on paper, no minis at all. Like we knew there were pewter ones, but nobody had any.
Yeah.
And we just would draw on literally on whatever loose leaf paper we had handy. And I ran for years that way. Right? High school and college, that's how I ran it. And then I jumped into 3.5, and it was so much richer with tactics. With the tactical sides, and opportunity attacks and standing and range and cover and all this stuff. And then they also put out, and this is germane to the whole topic of miniatures, which they started putting out the plastic pre-painted miniatures for Wizards of the Coast did, with the Harbinger set back in God knows when. I don't know. It must have been 15 years ago. And it was the first time that I started using actual miniatures at the table. And they were pretty cheap. Like you could buy 12 pre-painted plastic minis in a box for like, I don't know, $8 or $9. It wasn't a lot. And lucky for me, I bought a ton of them. So I have tons of these old minis. And and the game kind of was heavier about it. And I remember seeing how Wizards of the Coast at the time, Dave Noonan and all the folks that were kind of deep in D&D back then, they got heavier into tactics and they used to run these things at Gen Con called the Delves, and the Delves were just combat. Like you would go to a table and you'd have 6 characters and you'd fight a red dragon, and that was your you'd do an hour-long thing, and it was very tactical. And I think Dave Noonan actually generated these character sheets that were just built for running at these Gen Con events. And that, to me, felt like the beginning of the 4th edition of super refined, let's get rid of feet movement and go to squares. Let's talk about blast radiuses and squares and that heavy focus on minis. And then they supported it with things like the dungeon tiles, which I know you've used and we've talked about before. They supported it with, they put out those plastic mini sets over and over. And in fact, they kept wrapping them in their own separate war game that I don't think ever took off. I think they've tried that about 3 or 4 times, right?
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever really picked up. But boy, they sure put out a big blast of plastic minis over like a 20-year period, and they're still doing it today.
Good for us, right?
Yeah, well, and that's to me, this is kind of the thing I've always struggled with minis, which is it doesn't seem like there's ever a good time to get into them, because you're like, well, go hit the secondary markets and maybe you can get cheap commons, or it doesn't. There's never been like a nice clean, like go out and buy a box in your set. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about in particular is your use of tokens that you make, right? You've had an article on Newbie DM for many years that talks about how to make tokens. And then you had one recently where you talked about how you made tokens for Tomb of Annihilation.
Correct.
And it seemed like when I looked at that was by far the most flexible and cost-effective method of making, some kind of tokens for D&D. Can you tell us about that, and can you show us what you did?
Yeah, so I'll show it to you, and bear with me for a second. So when I started DMing 4th edition, I went ahead and started making my own tokens, and they kind of look like this. It was like a tube. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, not a tube. It was a disc, a wooden disc, or a washer,
right,
with a Photoshop image
of a monster on it.
Of a monster on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can't see my camera right now, so I can't tell if I'm.
Yeah, we kind of get the idea, but
yeah. So it's basically
that's good. Yeah. Right.
So you create an image and you slap it on a washer on a wooden. I bought these wooden discs at Michael's. Right. It was a bag of 100 for I don't know how cheap.
Right. Is that a rat? What is that?
It's a rat. Right.
Yeah. Good. Yep.
So and then what I did was in the 4E days I made one side the monster and then the other side a bloodied version of the monster. Yeah. I put an overlay of a blood splatter on it, so when the character would get bloodied or die, I'd flip the token over on the table and it was easy to keep track.
And that's very similar to what Wizards, when there was that period of time in the later 4E days where Wizards of the Coast made cardboard pawns like that.
And they did the same thing. I think somebody visited my website back then.
Yeah, they probably they looked at your stuff, just ripped you off.
Yeah. So then what I did with Tomb of Annihilation was, and I started thinking about tokens, and really my thinking was, how can I make this quicker? Like, what's a quicker way for me to? So here's what I came up with, and it's worked out really interesting. It's been pretty easy to do. So I came up with a monster, right? A token for a monster, and you put a colored ring around him.
The grung, is that right?
There's a grung.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And I colored him with a green ring. I made him with a green ring, and then I created numbered tokens with green rings as well.
Right.
So now when I want to lay down 5 grungs, all I lay down is the 1 custom grung.
Right.
And then I look for my numbered green tokens.
Right.
And that's my easy way to keep track of those guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I could reuse the green numbered guys again because I made other monsters with a green ring around them.
Do all your monsters have green rings, or do you separate monster types?
No. I have separate different colors for different guys.
Do you want either?
This guy, no, this is a lizard.
Lizard dude? Okay.
Yeah, lizard dude.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Art's great, yeah.
So it's very easy to tell who's who, what's what group of monsters is what, because they're color-coded there. And I'm really only making a few custom ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest are the numbered ones that I already have, and I'll keep reusing over and over and over again until until I get sick of playing D&D. And
it's been 15 or 10 years. Well, right. No, your whole life, really, right?
And then I have other things, like Costco milk gallon lids make great large-size creatures.
Look at that, yeah.
Yeah, so these guys are perfect 2-square width.
Right.
I have some of the wizard ones. I have my magnetic ones, Alea tools. These things, I bought these in the early 4E days.
Right.
Gen Con, I picked up little knickknacks. So I've used all sorts of things to represent characters. I also, it's not like I don't have minis. I have a ton of minis.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty large mini collection as well. So,
So when have you been running Tomb of Annihilation?
Oh yeah. I run a home game here.
And have you been using those tokens at the game, or do you find you diving back into your mini collection when you have...
No, I have to use those. I have to use those tokens because of I lay out all my minis, right?
Right.
I went through the exercise of going through all the random encounters for the hex crawl.
Yeah.
And I separated all the encounters into little bags. Because they're numbered and you can keep them orderly, right? So,
sure. Yeah.
And I put them all in little bags and I had them all, but I found that when the time came to really set up the combat, it was taking me too much time to dig through the bags and find the proper encounter and set up them. It was just too time consuming. Mm-hmm. And it was breaking the flow of the, people at the table waiting for me to dig through them. So I just said, what, screw this. I'm just going to go with the tokens, and I've been using tokens mostly.
So the token, when you said screw it and I'm going to go to the tokens, you're talking about the ones you're just showing us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So going and hunting down the right miniatures was what took too long?
Going through the bags of encounters and all that. It was just
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and what I really liked about that is, of course, the price and the flexibility, right? You could have 25 skeletons if you wanted, without having to find 25 skeleton minis. And in your case, you really only have to print one. Right, you get the one skeleton, and then you got your numbered bag with the other ones.
That's it.
Yeah, that's really, and so one of the, and you actually print out the images on paper and then glue them on or something like that.
I do. So I print them out on I usually print them out on photo paper.
Yeah.
If I don't have that, I'll use cardstock.
Right.
And then I have a little hole punch that I use to. It's a 1
inch.
inch.
Like a 1 inch hole punch.
Yeah, it's a 1 inch hole punch that you just slide the paper in.
Yeah.
You slide the paper in so the token is there, and you punch it right through, and it.
Right. What did you just ruin? Is that your taxes? What did you just punch a hole?
This is my 401k.
Yeah, right. Good job.
But you end up with a perfectly round image, and you slap it on a washer, and you're done.
So one of the things I had seen, I've been thinking about. I haven't done any of this myself, but I was kind of inspired by what you did, and it would seem that like a color printer, they have this adhesive paper, right? You can buy sheets of paper that's already pre-adhesive, and you could print them all out on that and punch them out, and then just peel them right off. Have you ever?
So I've never used that.
Like that. Yeah, I don't know if it works at all, but it's.
But I will share this with you though. These I'll share this. These alphabet discs.
Yeah.
The back of it was adhesive. They had a little thing, a paper you peel off, and it was a sticky because these were meant to be. Yeah. So I did that.
So the tokens were adhesive.
They were. Yeah.
You could just peel it off and then stick on your piece of paper, and you were done.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So this is kind of the curse of miniatures, which is you never have enough of the ones you need, right? That like I've got probably on the order of 2,000 miniatures, right? I've been lucky, like we were talking about that. I got in to starting to collect miniatures when plastic was cheap and oil was cheap, and China was hammering these things out as much as they could make, and the prices were great. And the secondary market, it was not uncommon to buy cheap, like common level minis for like 20 cents a piece. And, you know, some of the websites, if you ordered more than like $100, and it wasn't hard to fill up a bag full of 100 minis that you wanted, or, you know, whatever, in that case, lots of minis, and you got free shipping. So, you know, I bought tons of this stuff, and I look back and it's like, I have 14 of the gray cloaked cultists from the first Harbinger set, you know, and I don't know what they're worth now. I don't think they're worth terribly much, but no one's going to buy 14 of them. You can't even find 14 of them, you know, but I bought as many as I could, and it's still not, you know, I probably am good on cultists, but generally, like, it's always like I'm one troll short of whatever the encounter was. So having that flexible option to be able to make more, you know, is really, or to scale out, even if you don't know you're going to have need more, I think is a really powerful idea. And you know, and it's a good way, you know, I think we often think about, like, how would you recommend it to new people today? There's so many new people coming into D&D, right? What do we tell them? So what would you tell people to do if you have a new DM that's coming in and like, hey, what do I do about tokens and miniatures? I see people have them. I see these beautiful things on Twitter. What should I do? What's your answer to that?
So my answer would be, my sarcastic answer would be, you should tell Wizards to include tokens in the starter box. That would be my sarcastic answer. My real answer would be, well, you know, don't worry too much about what your figures look like on the table. Really concentrate on running a good game. And whether your monsters look like nickels or whether they look like M&Ms, don't really give that too much thought. Worry really about the story and about the characters and about the way you run your table. If your players are really hung up on representation, then you could start looking into minis or go visit my website and learn how to make your own tokens. That tutorial's fairly easy. There's an even easier way to do it now, and I gotta update the tutorial a bit, because there's a website now that'll actually let you make your own tokens on the website directly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you have to send that along. We'll stick it in.
I will. So that's what I would tell people. I would say, look, if your players, if nobody really cares about having an exact monster on the table, and that sort of immersion isn't important, then, you know, don't kill yourself if you don't have don't kill yourself over not having the right mini or the right token or whatever. I mean, you know, I'm using Costco milk cartons.
Right. It took you 15 years of evolution playing D&D.
Here's a goblin on a wolf.
Warg Riders. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've been running Tomb of Annihilation as well in my Sunday group, and I actually have taken to drawing a picture of the monster, particularly when it's one monster, just drawing them right on the battle mat. Like, I just take the same marker that I use to draw terrain, and I draw a little circle, and I'm like, that's a, you know, these are a goblin. This is a Batari. This is a Batari war stack right here.
You're getting lazier and lazier.
I know, and I'm like, I'm too late. So you know, I gotta plug it, because I do think it's one of my favorite kind of evolutions in minis, and I'll pull it out right here. And that's Flat Plastic Minis by Arc Knight Games. Have you had a chance? Did you see these? You were over at my place not too long ago.
I did see them.
I think you got a chance to see them there.
And I think they're awesome.
Yeah. So this is like, you know, 150 minis in this package. This is a business card holder, right? And you can fit a whole ton. I separated them out by, like, you know, male humanoids and female humanoids and monsters and undead and wolf things and, you know, bigger monsters and, you know, whatever, those that resemble flies from a great distance. And, you know, each one of them is this super, you know, it's, you know, wafer thin, right? But it has this really nice art on it. And I like these a lot, because, and it seemed like this was as close as I could come. So in full disclosure, I worked on a set with them that they refer to as Sly Flourish's curated flat plastic miniatures. It's a great name. And I do get a cut when they sell a version of them. But what I did is I worked with all of the art that they had and tried to pick out the art that I thought would fit the most common and most versatile pieces that they had, so they could sell it in a set. And I don't remember what the set goes for now.
I do, because I've tried looking for it on Amazon and they don't have it on Amazon yet. He's got a bunch of other sets, but the Sly Flourish curated set is not on Amazon
yet. Right. So it's $80 now. It was on sale before, not to ruin everybody's happy night, but it was cheaper. I think it was $60 before. Yeah, sorry. I hope you got in on it early. And it's how many? 167 minis, including bigs, smalls and larges. All the dragons are there, and then all the bases. And what I like is like this. I just take this to my, I take this to my game. It's super easy to throw it in. It's got all the minis in it. But anyway, my point is that I'm even too lazy to pull that out. Right? That I don't have time to pull out 10 goblins. I'm just gonna draw dots on a map and say, these are goblins. And then when they move, I erase it and I draw it in its new position. And I'm right back to where I was 25 years ago playing in college, where I used to draw things out on a piece of paper.
I have another idea for you. Or another, and pardon me. Check this out. So, these binder clips?
Yeah.
Office supply binder clips?
Yeah. Sure.
So the really small ones, you can use as medium-sized mini bases.
Right. Yeah.
If you make your own paper minis, and these little goblins I have.
Yeah. Right.
You make your own paper minis. You could use these binder clips, and they sort of stand up straight. Let's see if I could do it here. They sort of stand up, and you could use them on your. Game.
There's a site I've seen them posted about a lot on Twitter. That specialize in you being able to buy digital versions of that.
Yeah, they're really cool. They're really
like paper. I forget what they call them. Damn.
There's a paper. There's a few different guys that are doing it. For different artists.
But that seems like a really good approach. I mean, it's not a good one for me because I have a color printer, and ink could get expensive too if you're printing a lot of them.
So when you make tokens, and here's what I used to do with my tokens to keep them organized.
Yeah.
I went on eBay and I bought coin collector tubes.
Yeah, right.
And these coin collector tubes, they look like pill bottles almost.
Yeah.
The tokens fit perfectly in them.
Yeah.
And you could keep a stack. And then what I would do is I would label them with, undead. Or whatever.
Right. Yep.
And sort of store my tokens this way.
Great.
So not everything has to be a mess.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was the same way. Like the idea that in this one envelope I can store my big pile of flat plastic minis, worked out really well.
Some guy put in the comments short manian 444. These guys are like the MacGyvers of minis.
Well, this is the point, right? Like I think everybody has to turn into the MacGyver minis because there isn't a good solution. Right? There's not one. I haven't found one good. Like the fact that we're still evolving. Right? How long have we been playing D&D? And we're still figuring out freaking miniatures. That's why I wanted to have the show, right? Like, what do we do? I mean, because the other one is, I haven't even talked about the, my great, my horrifying collection of unpainted Reaper minis that I bought, right? Like I've backed every Kickstarter they have because they're such a fantastic deal. And then I get them and I put them in Ziploc bags with the old ones that I haven't painted either.
Look at all these bags I have.
And I love them. Like it's a great deal. And so I'm trying everything. Like, so here's another one. And I know this is a very popular choice and it comes up very often whenever I bring this topic up. And that's the Pathfinder. Yeah. Look at that. Oh,
I made these myself.
Yeah. So you get those on Amazon?
No. So these are my kids' toys and I bought them on Amazon and I glued a piece of cardboard under it. And
I actually said what name kind of monster or what kind of I got to do that. I've got a bunch upstairs. I keep forgetting to bring my game. So a very popular choice is Pathfinder pawns. Have you ever spent any time with these?
I've seen them in the store, but I haven't.
Yeah.
It's really what I do with the tokens is more or less the same thing. Pretty
much, yeah. These like this is for somebody who doesn't want to bother to have to print and punch. Yeah. And they have a whole variety of different sets. And the thing that steered me away from it is that they almost were invariably out of print. So, they weren't a bad deal when they were available. They were like $40 for like every monster that is in their creature, the Pathfinder creature catalog, which is pretty close to everything that you need in a D&D game too, right? It's almost the same. And it had multiples for skeletons and kobolds and goblins and everything else. And then most of like the big monsters that only had one. And it was this huge box. It's like this 2.5-inch box full of cardboard, just like the old Monster Vault boxes. Remember those things were these big bricks.
Hey, I bought those. That's where these guys come from.
So I just checked tonight, and tonight it is available on Amazon again for like $38, and it's like 320 miniatures, wow. And bases. And I'm like, wow, okay, and I told my wife, I'm like, I think I'm gonna buy that. And she's like, what the hell are you buying that for? You got 2,000 minis. You got every flat plastic miniature that they've ever put out, multiple copies of that. You've got boxes of Reaper minis upstairs, and now you're gonna buy.
I've been to your house. She's right.
Yeah, she's correct, and I'm still probably gonna buy it. Yeah, mostly to help others. Right, I do it out of love.
Right.
So I have experience with these, and I can mention. But I've played a lot with pawns as well. In fact, the Pathfinder starter set included a bunch, like a base level of monsters and heroes, and it was a really good deal.
I mean, if you're Wizards of the Coast, why aren't you including a sheet of monster tokens for the starter set?
I'll argue with you a little bit about that, and that's so I actually am writing an article for D&D Beyond about how to get started in D&D, and my recommendation is not just like you kind of brought up before. It's not bad to start the same way we started back in 2nd edition, right? Like 5th edition, and this is an arguable point, and I've heard many of the arguments about it. I think you and I have had this argument.
I know where this is going.
Right, that 5th edition doesn't expect a grid and miniatures, because and my argument for it is they used to use squares and now they went back to feet. Now, granted, everything is in 5-foot increments. I get it, but to me, if I as I recommend to new DMs, the idea is like there's enough going, and you said it right. Like, don't worry about what you're putting down on the table. Worry about the story. Worry about the characters. Worry about as you say, we should really be thinking big about our campaign world and building out the gods for the last 50,000 years and the histories, and not worrying about when I'm kidding, right?
So
run the people.
So you're a young man. Are any of the new streams that kids are into these days? Are any of these guys streaming? Are any of these guys or ladies streaming Theater of the Mind games?
Yep. Yeah. So one of the other guests of our show was Will Jones, who runs the Encounter Roleplay Twitch channel. Okay. He's half our age, and he's making a full-time living running D&D 40 hours a week.
He's 10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish. So, and I just emailed him. I think he and I have been emailing back and forth talking about the streaming and the explosion in streams. Our conversation that you and I had, the lost conversation that you and I had on Twitch that is now gone in the ether. And he is exclusively Theater of the Mind. So he said, and his reason is, I don't have time. Like, I'm running 40 hours of D&D. I don't have time to figure out maps and minis. And, it does very well. Now, like Matt Mercer on Critical Role uses pretty detailed encounter setups with little trees and 3D terrain, Dwarven Forge level stuff. But if you listen to their game, they're not very typical on like counting squares out or saying, my fireball is just out of range from being able to hit this. They speak very narratively about how combat is going. But one could argue that they are at least 50-50 narrative and tactical. 50 at least being they might be more tactical with minis than they are narrative. I'm only just watching their second season. I don't have, but I know that's back and forth. And I think I have, so I haven't done any kind of, me, I'd like to do a big survey and ask, but I believe that Theater of the Mind is pretty common in streaming games.
Okay.
Now the alternative is Roll20, and I know you're a big Roll20 user, right? You've used Roll20. I got to glimpse. In fact, you and I in our conversation hung out in your Star Wars universe for a little while, which just blew me away. Just loading it up and having the Star Wars theme music play. I was like, that,
And then I had to kill it. Then I had to kill it because I was on Twitch and somebody was going to flag me for copyright.
IP violation. So that's a whole other thing. And miniatures in virtual tabletops is a whole different thing. and I don't think nearly as big a problem. Would you agree with that?
So I'll tell you my method.
Yeah.
Not since you asked.
Yeah. Tell me your method.
So I use the same method for digital minis as I do for paper tokens.
Huh?
I go to the same website and I create tokens using. It's called Roll Advantage is the website.
And is that the site you're talking about that makes
the site I'm talking about? Yeah. So you basically drag a picture into the token maker, and it spits out a token. You could select the border, you could select the color, you could select whatever, and then you save it onto your computer. So I use that to import it into Roll20 as a token, and I also use it to paste it into Photoshop as a token, and I print it out, and I have a digital copy and I have a paper copy, a hard copy.
Yeah, and that's so you can do both, right? You have it both in Roll20 and in
I do both.
physical.
When I was setting up my Tomb of Annihilation game, I made some tokens for my home game there, and I made the same version for my digital Tomb of my Roll20 Tomb game.
Right.
The same one.
Yeah. Now, one huge difference is you can have 500 skeleton tokens in VTT, and it costs you no extra effort at all.
Well, it's Control V and Control P.
Yeah, right.
Control C, Control V.
Control C, Control V. So, yeah, and the other, I know that's an option on Roll20 is you can buy the monster manual.
You can. I did.
And it gives you all of the I mean, it's full price, or it's full retail price.
It is.
I think it's $50, but for that $50, not only do you get all the material that you'd have in the monster manual anyway, but you also get the ability to see the stat block directly on the icon, and you get tokens for every single one of them. And then again, if you want 25 skeletons, you can just Control C, Control V, and you've got as many skeletons as you want. So that's it's like, there isn't any physical parallel to that, right? Like I'm not kidding when I say like, oh man, I need 3 stone giants and I have 2. Like
I mean, I've seen people run games at home for their home group using Roll20.
Yeah, so that's if people have the ability to, they have big TV in the area that they're playing, or they, if they go all out and have the big TV that's sitting on the table with like a plexiglass thing over the top. That seems like it could be a very powerful.
Which I think is a really cool setup and a really cool way to play the game.
Yeah. I've never actually played that way, and I'd really love to. But yeah, your point about the challenge of hunting down the right minis, like even going and finding the encounter bag, and how it breaks the flow of the game. Is I think when the more I think about the story focus of D&D, the evolution of the story focus of D&D, that to me feels to me like a bigger gap than I believe I used to think about it. Right.
So have you played Shadow the Demon Lord?
Yes, I have. I actually played Shadow the Demon Lord with the Rob Schwab, the Demon Lord himself.
Oh, you at Wonder Fantasy? Or?
Fantasy and other places. Yeah, thank you very much.
So you're familiar with the way combat works, where you don't really roll initiative.
Fast, slow. Yep.
You sort of ease into the fight through the narration, basically.
Yeah. Right.
Can you imagine having to pause that to go digging through a bag of?
No. Yeah, and that's and nor same with Numenera. When I run Numenera games, in the rare times when I love Numenera, but I just don't. I'm busy, and I wish I could play more. I always like to think that in an alternate universe, I'm playing a lot of Numenera, and Fate also, and 13th Age to a point, and Dungeon World certainly are all that sort of narrative-driven thing where there's no break between interaction and NPC interaction and exploration and role playing and combat. It's all the scenes flow together, which could actually one thing I have found playing those games is I kind of need the break sometimes, because like nonstop improvisational storytelling is really hard for 4 hours, and that time digging through a bag looking for a mini, sometimes I need that time. I need a break.
Yeah,
and the ones where combat happens real fast, it's like I need times between turns. Like combat actually kind of gives me a little bit of a reprieve while somebody has to look up their spells. I go, oh, thank God, splash water all over myself, right? I'll take a break, go make a cocoa. I've done that. They're like, go, it's your turn. I'll go make a cocoa. But so what I'm finding is the more I think about sort of the narrative focus of D&D, the harder it is, like I said, even for me to go grab my flat plastic minis and bring them out. And that's why I've started like drawing right on the mat. And the other part, which is what you say, like I don't know what the hell battle we're going to fight. I don't know if it's going to be a battle, right? Like they could end up talking their way through situations. And I've got my bag of minis in one hand and my, Dwarven Forge setup all over the table, and they're having conversations, So how do I stay fluid and flexible? Because I don't know what kind of scene it's going to be. And, that's why, that idea of narrative combat is so much more compelling for me these days. Because I'm still going to have set piece battles. I know when they're going to go and face Imrith at the end of Storm King's Thunder. I better get my Blue Dragon miniature that I have downstairs, and I better build a really cool setup because this is the culmination of the game, right? This is what it's all about. But like if they're having, I don't know, with those goblins, they might not even see them, And why don't we jump to questions from the audience? I think it's a good point. We always have our guardian angel, Alex Basso, who just helped us out with our technical difficulties. Alex, what questions do we have from Twitch and from Twitter tonight?
Sure. So thank you first off, everyone, for asking questions. And thank you, quick shout out to Game Pawn. Thank you for subscribing to our Twitch channel. First question I'm going to ask from Twitter comes from the IDDM.
Our friends Michael Mellon.
What's the best way to store, organize, and access all this stuff?
That's a very good question. Enrique, how do you store and access your...
So I keep tokens in coin tubes.
Right.
I keep minis in Ziplocs.
Uh-huh.
And I use my Tomb of Annihilation dice box.
Right.
To keep my special numbered tokens with the rings. Excellent. That I was describing earlier.
Yeah. I might have to I think I'm going to have to do that. You've inspired me. I got to do that.
I keep these specifically for the Tomb of Annihilation game.
Yeah.
So, for example, here's my Chewinga with a black border around it.
Yeah.
In case I ever want to have 5 Chewingas.
Yep.
So that's how I do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I primarily have plastic 3-dimensional minis. I just showed my flat plastic mini, so I won't go over that again. And I bought these, Target had these drawers that had lids that would come down on them. And there's like 7 or I think maybe 9 drawers per thing. And my wonderful wife lets me keep them in the dining room. And I've labeled each of them for different miniature types. And I kept the categories to categories that made sense to me and fit the amount of minis that I have. So I have like a male heroes and female heroes, and I have undead, and I have large bipeds and normal biped monsters, and good humanoids and bad humanoids, which is incredibly, those ones are incredibly racist. And but then I started expanding out to more large bipeds. And then my friends will be like, so which is it? Large bipeds or more large bipeds? And I, of course, am like, the more is the one that has the earth elementals in it. The regular is just ogres. So yeah, that like how to store these things is another challenge, because like those Target ones, I remember somebody saying like, oh, these Target cabinets are really, really great. And then like they were gone and you can't buy them anymore. I'm like, luckily I bought 3 and I know they've lasted me for 15 years or 10 years. So yeah, it's another trick. Alex, what other questions do you have?
Okay, one from Twitch chat from Shortman Ian. Do you think 3D printing will reach the point that you can basically print tokens and minis on demand?
It's a really good question. Enrique, have you ever spent any time with 3D printing?
So I have not, but I follow a guy on Twitter.
Yeah, I follow a guy on Twitter
who has printed out a 3D printed out, and he's modeled himself. Every monster in the Monster Manual and Bolo's Guide to Monsters.
I've seen that, yeah, and they're incredible.
And they are beautiful minis.
Yeah.
And he models them himself I think he uses Blender. It's a modeling program.
Yep.
And he prints them out.
Yeah.
And they are amazing. And then I saw a guy in the Facebook group the other day. He made himself a Beholder mini with a top hat and a monocle. Excuse me. The Beholder had a top hat and a monocle, and he was drinking tea.
With what? Telekinesis?
I don't know if it was one of his eye stalkers.
One of its eye stalkers holding the teeth.
Yeah, something like
I'm gonna
that.
hold teeth with my eyeball.
And I'm like, I really want that mini, and I offered to buy it off him for $25, and he never got back to me.
Yeah, there's a website. So I asked around, like, where can I get a really good Demogorgon? I have, so one of my favorite minis I keep on my desk. This is my Orcus mini, the full-sized, awesome Orcus mini, and every opportunity I have to drop him on the table, he goes on the table. And I'd love to have a Demogorgon mini like that. I'd love to have all the Demon Princes. I have a Grisat because, he's a little fella. But I wanted a Demogorgon, and they had a 3D printed Demogorgon, but it was still like $65 for an unpainted Demogorgon mini. And so I don't know that the price, has hit the price to 3D print minis. I don't think has hit that good point yet. I have this dream that, like, you pulling out the tin where I have like all my minis that I used last week, and I dump them in the top of this thing, and it melts them all down, and then prints out whatever minis I need next, and then I could just have recyclable minis.
I have to admit, I did buy myself a printed mini, but it wasn't for D&D.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ships in Star Wars is this Millennium Falcon-like ship that has the cockpit in the middle instead of on the side. And some guy made a 3D printed version of that for the X-Wing game. So I bought a copy of that, and I painted it myself, and I have my own. Because when I play the Star Wars RPG at home, I always have my pilot use that ship.
That's awesome.
So I bought myself a copy of it's a YT 1900, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, like you're pretending you don't know.
Right.
I don't want to be too much the Star Wars nerd.
I'm not that big of a nerd.
The other one is Hero Forge. Like, there's a website called Hero Forge. I've never tried it myself, but I've seen people use it, and friends of mine have used it for their minis, where you can go in and design your own hero mini, and they'll print it out, and you get to pick the material that it's printed out on. You can get metal. A friend of mine made her character in, I don't know what kind of metal, I'm not sure what it was. And they're beautiful. They're also expensive.
They're very expensive.
Yeah. Depending on, which might not be, if you're like, I don't know, if you're playing a 2-year campaign and you don't think you're going to get killed in the first, 3 levels, it might be worth going ahead and, making a nice, that's if you're going to die. But, I could see like sort of immortalizing a character that I really loved with a really nice mini. And then you can also get them printed on in plastic, but I think they've been more brittle, and I've seen a lot of them that broke, where like if you build a weapon out, the weapon breaks off, and that's, I don't have that problem with the PVC based minis that I'm getting from Reaper Bones. And the other thing with Reaper Bones is you can paint them whatever you want to paint them. So, if I need a dwarf fighter, I don't need to go model a dwarf fighter. I've got like 30 different dwarf fighters that already are made, and I'll just do the color scheme myself.
At this point, Mike, what mini don't you have?
I have, Demogorgon, and that fourth troll that I need, for that one fight. That's the problem. I always need something, and I'm still buying them. I'm still waiting.
Like, do you ever find yourself about to set up an encounter and you're like, no, and you're missing?
Oh yeah, every freaking week. Wow. Yeah. Not all the time, but many times. I'm always missing that one. I've got.
You have a lot of minis. I've seen your collection.
I have a ton. Yeah, and the great ones is like, the mini that I use the most is the stupid crossbow guy. Like the bandit crossbow dude. He was like the first. He's a Harbinger mini, and I've got 4 of them, and I know that I have 4 because I always pull those guys out. Because, my guys are always fighting crossbow.
Is that the guy that's kneeling with the
No, he's got like a bucket helm, and he's just standing there with a crossbow. Like, it's boring mini, but I use that and the cultists, right?
I have like 7. I have like 7 copies of the guy that's kneeling with the bow. He's like wearing green.
Oh, yeah. I've got that dude.
I hate that guy.
No, that's kind of how I feel about the crossbow guy, but what else am I going to use? Like, it's a dude with a crossbow. That's exactly what I need. Alex, what else you got?
Okay, we got another one from Twitter from @MikeBean. As someone who enjoys painting minis but has 0 talent at said painting, what resource would you recommend for an untalented beginner?
That's a good question.
Reaper sells a Learn to Paint kit.
They do, yeah.
And I bought that.
YouTube can be your friend too. There's a lot of really good. I'm trying to remember the name of it. The Paint Doctor. Something like that. There's one that's like the miniature painting doctor, and he's got like a whole series of videos. And I had never painted a mini before until about 3 years ago when I got those Reaper ones. And now I actually really enjoy when I can squeeze in the time. I really enjoy finding a nice D&D podcast or watching a stream and sitting and painting a mini while I'm watching it. And I find that incredibly relaxing. I'm terrible at it. Like the minis that I put out are certainly, I'll never do an eyeball. You know, I have sworn off trying to draw eyes. I don't care how big they make the eye on the mini. I'm not drawing an eye on it. But you know, it's not quite as hard as you think. And there's a couple of techniques like washing and dry brushing that, you know, I have found to make minis that look like complete crap all of a sudden look really good. And all you're doing is like putting some black ink on it. And then
I've done like
dry brush.
Digital. I've done like digital painting on my tokens.
Yeah.
As I use Photoshop, and I have a drawing tablet on my desk. Right. So like maybe I'll give like a token an eye patch or something. Yeah. You know, like I'll customize it with a scar, some stupid thing like that to sort of make him a little unique or whatever.
Yeah, but I haven't painted a whole lot in.
I don't paint a lot of minis, to be honest with you. I'm not really into that.
So and I do not to well, what the hell? I've been plugging crap all the time. That's all I do. On Sly Flourish, I have a guide to painting minis that has a bunch of links for places to see more, and I'll stick that in the show notes. I say that I don't even know if we have show notes, but I'll put it somewhere. One can find it. Go Google Sly Flourish miniature painting, and you'll find it. Alex, what else you got?
Okay, one from Twitch from Alpha Stream.
Hey, Deus.
What do you guys recommend for huge and gargantuan minis? Also, what about terrain bits? Chests, pillars, bridges?
Enrique, what do you do for, particularly for your hole punch? Do you have to cut them out by hand? How do you handle large and huge and gargantuans? Do you have a big-ass token, like a coffee can lid?
I have used big-ass tokens, as you call them. I usually cut out cardboard squares.
Right.
I say we shop at Costco a lot, so I save a lot of boxes, and I use all that excess cardboard for bases for like the dinosaurs and like this type of stuff that I showed you that I made.
Right.
So I'll try to make bases or 3x3s or 4x4s.
Right.
Whatever. I don't know. I sort of play with what I got.
Sure. Yeah.
I improvise a lot. I'm not a stickler for. I don't know. If I have it, I'll try it. I have some tokens that are scenery tokens.
Yeah.
Or I'll just draw it on the mat. Mm-hmm. I scribble. Here's a table.
Yeah, I have. I one of my miniature boxes is called accessories, and then another one is called Sly Flourish's Fantastic Floors, and it just has floor pieces like arcane runes and lava pits and other things that I have picked up from various places. Arknight, and I'm not getting any money for this, so it's not a plug. Well, it's a plug for them. Arknight actually has a whole scenery thing that you can pick up and then cut out, and that's a really nice one too. It has like little caravans and it's got trees and stuff like that. I think there's also a Kickstarter going on for scenery.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You know where I've spent a lot of time at the pet shop going through the aquarium, aquarium aisle?
Yep.
You can find all sorts of cool stuff at the aquarium aisle.
Yeah, the other
skulls and a lot of pulpy stuff like skulls and bridges and
old ruins. Yeah,
old ruins and things that people use for their fish tanks.
I've never done it, but I've heard lots of people that go and rate.
And it's kind of and the scale is kind of more or less. It's good enough,
right? And I've picked up, again, it's one of these where like over the years you just sort of pick up collections, and I picked up like used. There was like Mage Knight used to have these like scenery things, and I bought those for pillars. And of course, Dwarven Forge is the go-to for all 3D terrain kind of stuff, and so they have lots of little accessories. And I find that those little accessories can make a big difference, like the little details. Alpha Stream, of course, pretending like he doesn't know about all this stuff, posted a really nice. I think he had the Bazaar of Port Nyanzaru in 3D terrain, and he took these pictures, and it's got tiny little chickens. Like cooked chickens out on tables and I'm like, my God, and then he said that nobody showed up. He had to cancel the game. So
and they were edible.
Yeah, right. Tiny little edible chickens, right? Carved out of peas. I don't know. But yeah, those little accessories can be really great. And then the other thing is Wizards of the Coast has put dungeon tiles back out again. They have the new dungeon tile master sets, and that has 2D terrain elements that you can drop on a table.
I'm really, honestly, I'm not joking around. I'm surprised they haven't put out a pack like dungeon tiles, but of tokens. I'm sure they have all those monster tokens lying around.
Yeah, I know. They've got. It would take nothing to. It would take nothing. They've got all the art. I wonder if it's an art thing because it's all the old art from 4E, and I think they probably get saying. I know, like we probably wouldn't care, but I wonder if that might be.
If you're new to 5E, if you're new to D&D, do you know it's old art? You don't.
No, I know. I don't know what it would be. Like that's the only thing. Like, well, they had sort of a creative vision of what monsters look like in 5E that's different from how they looked in 4E. And you and I wouldn't give a shit, but other people were like, oh, I don't know, these bugbears, man. Bugbears, they're different. I mean, like I have like 7 different kinds of orcs that don't even look like they're the same species.
I think you're leaving money on the table.
I'm sure I think they are too. I think it would take nothing at all for them to put those token packs out, and I think people would buy them. And I think they're far more useful than the dungeon tiles. I'm not a big fan of dungeon tiles.
Maybe I'll talk to them, see if I can get a Newbie DM created.
Yeah, go for it, man. That'd be some good bank. Make sure you get percentage.
Yeah.
Get it. Don't walk away with just your name on the box.
Reincarnated monster tokens from Wizards of the Coast.
Right. Excellent. Alex, what other questions you got?
Okay, I got one from Johnny Utah 99 in Twitch. What is your favorite mini? What is the jewel of your collection?
Man. Enrique, what do you got? What's your favorite one?
I have a Strahd mini that's really cool.
Really?
Came out with when Curse of Strahd came out.
Yeah.
And I have the Acerak mini from.
Oh, do you? The new one with the big hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of liches. Like I don't need another. I know the big hat's a big icon. I'm pretty sure my players aren't going to care.
I'm a sucker for dwarves.
When I hit them with a meteor swarm, they're not going to be thinking about that hat.
I'm a sucker for dwarves, and I have this mini. I think he's a dwarf warlock with a white beard.
Yeah. And
it's one of the plastic Wizards ones. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It might be that one.
Yeah, so I already talked. I guess as favorite minis go, I've already shown off my ultimate favorite of Orcus. I've always loved Orcus. Orcus was like the first monster that got my attention in the old monster manual. Yeah, he just felt forbidden just reading his stat block. And I have my gargantuan. Oh, hang on, I gotta go. Yeah, there's a good one. I got that one. The Broodmother, right?
No,
isn't it?
No, Beholder, Ultimate Tyrant.
Oh yeah, it's huge though, right? It's a great big beholder.
Yeah, it's big.
Hang on, I'm gonna go get one of my other favorites.
We'll be right back, everybody. Stand by. Technical difficulties.
Do you remember this guy?
I never had that. That's a beautiful mini.
Hang on, I gotta get my headset on. So this one, when I first got it, I had to put it next to my Shepherd so that it had scale.
That's a beautiful miniature.
Yeah, it's huge. I took the fiery breath off of him because it looked kind of tacky. But it's not very common when you drop the.
I'll be right back.
The colossal red.
I'll be right back. Give me a second. Now you get to sing to the people in the audience.
Yeah, I will. Sorry. So if I got my black, I actually have all of the dragons in huge sizes, which I like very much, and I pull out. I have the blue. The blue sits upstairs with me, mostly because of Imrith from Imrith from Storm King's Thunder. There you go. That's a mini. You gotta put that. You gotta get that in your.
Here's one of my favorites.
What are the D&D stats for that guy? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, this guy's cool. My son took him from me and broke off one of the lasers.
Oh no!
I love that guy.
So then I gotta go with Crossbow Man. By use, he is my favorite mini.
Kneeling crossbow elf.
Kneeling bow guy, right?
I hate that guy. He looks like a cheap Robin Hood.
Right. Alex, what other questions you got?
Okay, on Twitter, at Joe G. Kushner wants to know, should costs be distributed among the group?
Oh, yeah, like to buy minis?
Yeah, buying.
I don't know. Should such a hard question. Enrique, what do you think? Does your group ever chip in money for any of the minis?
No, they bring me beer.
Yeah, that works.
I've never asked either.
Right. Like I've gotten an occasional gift, but like, I'm into this hobby and I don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind spending money.
Right. I don't mind getting involved. So they have certainly brought their own character minis and stuff like that. But, I don't know. I mean, it's, it could be for groups where, they're not professionals and, it can be hard to scrape up a few bucks for whatever. I don't know that it's out of hand to have the conversation about it. But it's not something I've ever done. Do we have any other questions?
Sure. We got one more from Johnny Utah in Twitch. What's the absolute cheapest thing you ever ended up using as a mini? Plastic Army Man?
I think you can go cheaper than that. Enrique, what's the cheapest thing you've ever used?
A little bit of paper.
Right, a little scrap of paper. You can get pretty cheap. I mean, I literally drew a snake on a whiteboard. Can't get much cheaper than a little. Oh no! What'd you just do? What did you do? Oh, you ripped your mini. Yeah, a little piece of cardboard. It's pretty cheap. I've seen people. I mean, people use everything, right? And they use starbursts. I've seen a lot of them where like you get to eat the guys you kill and get diabetes in the same process. I've seen little glass beads. I mean, people use all kinds of things, and everything can be used. Now, the hard part is like as a player, this is where like when I think about kind of what value they bring to the table. I know as a player, when I go and play organized play games at conventions, the DMs who have the actual minis always impress me more than the ones who don't. And I get it. Like I'm in the other seat and I know how hard it can be to get the right minis I certainly don't expect that everybody's been dumping the money that I've been dumping into it for the last 10 years. But, boy, it's nice, when it's fun when you have your right mini for, your character and they have the right minis or at least minis that are close enough for theirs. I know on the player side, I really enjoy it. So the prices can kind of go all over, and I think you can go cheap, but I think there is a value in having a really nice, and having a nice mini. What do you think, Enrique?
I think when you have a fun encounter and the mini matches and everybody's into it, I think people enjoy the first time you pull out the Red Dragon.
Yeah, right.
Maybe the 15th time it comes out.
Make an impact. Yeah.
Maybe it makes an impact.
Literally an impact, yeah. First
few times, and then after a while, I guess, if it's the same old players, they might. I don't know. My player again. I come from the people I play with here at home. They're kind of indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
They're more interested. They're more interested in.
It doesn't matter.
They're more interested in let's get the game going and stop looking for the right mini. Just put something down.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's to kind of capture that as sort of, if you think of it like a table aid, the same way you think of like the stuff you buy at the fish shop, anything that kind of just brings you into the game a little bit more, can be a little bit more immersive, but at what cost? Literal cost, and then time cost, and
I think I'm more into it than my players are.
What's that?
I think I'm more into it than my players.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I would right. The interesting thing for me is kind of when I have put myself on the player side, I like the minis too. So I don't know, but on the other hand, I've had many of great games where the minis were starbursts again, and that's that's perfectly fine. Alex, do we have anything else?
I think that about covers it.
Oh, right. Well, we've spent an hour. We've talked about minis. I don't know that we've solved the mini problem for anybody. Do you have any sort of final? Yeah. So do you have any final recommendations for people that are either already involved but kind of rethinking their life choices when it comes to minis, or for new people who are getting involved? What should they aim for?
So if you're interested in making your own tokens, do a search on Google for Newbie DM counters and tokens, and you're going to see a tutorial come out. And I've got to update it a little bit. It's a little outdated because there's websites that actually help you do it a lot easier. But I think it's a good starting point if you're interested in that sort of thing. I also have a tutorial there about how to print out maps to 1-inch scale if you want to use your tokens on an actual printed map. And then, like you said, there's the pogs that you could buy on the Pathfinder ones, the pawns. There's the flat mini. I mean, there's so many different options these days. We didn't really get into paper minis, and I think paper minis are a good option for people. And I mentioned them a little bit. I showed them off a little bit, but you could find these. There's artists that sell PDFs with art that you could download and print at home and make your own little paper minis, and you cut them out and you put them on bases. They sell plastic bases for them, or you can go the old school route, use pennies and nickels and dimes. I mean, as long as your game is fun, you have to worry about running a good game.
Yeah, right.
Worry about the game itself and not as much about the how you're representing the monsters and the characters.
Yeah.
Some people get too bogged down with that stuff, and then they forget that they're primarily there to run a fun game.
Right. Yeah. I say this a lot, and I've been, with Dwarven Forge, I've been thinking about it a lot, which is, if you spend 10 minutes thinking about how you're going to hook the characters into the story, which characters are going to be at the table, and how you can draw them in, and what backgrounds they have that you can tie into the ongoing story, I think that will make such a bigger difference in the enjoyment of everybody at the table than spending a lot of time digging through boxes looking for the right minis. That idea of just how am I going to build interesting situations that highlight the characters.
I agree.
And I mean, it's not one or the other, right? But I know that my own drive is that I want to spend more time thinking about minis. So yeah, I think that for new people, I'm just going to give my thoughts too. For new people that are getting involved from a miniature perspective, the getting into the while the full 3D plastic minis are, I think, kind of the nicest. The nicest kind of mini that you can generally get these days. The cost of getting in there, is really challenging. And because they're randomly assorted, because you have to hit the secondary market and hope, there's a lot of challenges there. But that idea of starting with, I think for somebody who's got a color printer and wants to spend the time to make them, that is a great solution. For people that don't have a color printer or don't have the time, I think. There are a few situations that there are a few different places that you can get them. Flat plastic minis, I have mentioned before. I think those are a great way. I do think that the Pathfinder bestiary pawns are really good too, and that's a reason. You can get 350 monsters and 100 characters for under $50, I think, on Amazon, and that's pretty hard to beat. Those are good solutions, I think. But yeah, it's a tough, it's a rabbit hole. Like you get,
it is.
You start digging into this, and you will, I have found that we're still struggling with it today, and we've been doing it forever. So, it's a big topic. Enrique, it is always a great pleasure to talk to you. I thank you very much for coming onto the show. Alex, thank you for managing the show, and thanks to everybody that came to watch us on Twitch, and for all of you guys watching on YouTube. Enrique, do you have anything you'd like to plug on our way out?
Do I have anything I'd like to plug? I have my new mini-cast here on Don't Split the Podcast Network.
Back.
The Newbie DM mini-cast is back. It's a short podcast, 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most, where I answer a listener question with another DM. And you'll come on the show soon.
Yeah, I would love to.
And I'm having fun with that, so I'm doing that. And then I got my Twitter feed at Newbie DM.
Yep.
And my website, newbiedm.com.
That's great.
That's about it.
It's been a great pleasure. So I want to thank everybody, and we will.